This is the brand new iPad Pro with tandem OLED, and this is the new 2024 iPad Air. They're both 13 inches, and these are some of the nicest tablets I have ever used. But there's one thing that I've been struggling with. Every time there's a new iPad Pro, I get excited. I'm like, this looks awesome. I'm going to be using this to do all my work. But once I get into the studio, reality kicks in after using it for about an hour. I start running into roadblocks. I realize I can't complete what I need to do on the iPad alone, and I have to transfer it back to my computer. And that's a very hard pill to swallow for the price point that they're asking for this thing. Like, this thing is very expensive. Like, when you add the Magic Keyboard to this and the Apple Pencil Pro, you're getting around $2,000 for an iPad. Like, that's more expensive than a MacBook Air 13. I think the only niche where this is really perfect for right now is the drawing and artist and sketching category. Like, if you need an Apple Pencil, this tablet is perfect for that. Now look, Apple has been dropping some hints that WWDC will be a major announcement for AI, and we're gonna see things that we've never seen before. And I feel like that's gonna trickle down to iPadOS 18 and make this a bit more diversified, you know? And I think that will really, hopefully, bring out the true use cases of this beautiful hardware, because they have done some good stuff. Like, this is a super thin iPad, like 5.3 millimeters for the 11th inch version and 5.1. Like, when you pick this thing up, it feels great. And then you look at this beautiful display, this beautiful tandem OLED display, and you're just mesmerized. You know, like when I saw the mini LED display on the iPad Pro in 2022, I was like, wow, this is insane. This just takes that to the next level. They have changed in other few things as well. Like, even though technically this is a lighter iPad than before, when you add on the Magic Keyboard, you're looking at a weight of 2.7 pounds. The MacBook Air 13 is also 2.7 pounds. It's still lighter than the 3.06 pounds of the Magic Keyboard and iPad Pro from 2022, but it still weighs just as much as a laptop. Now, there are a couple of nerfs. So they did remove one of the studio microphones. It went down from 5 to 4. So I'm gonna do a microphone test compared to the previous iPad Pro, and you guys let me know which one sounds better. Right now you are listening to the iPad Pro 2022. This is what the microphone sounds on the iPad Pro 2022. You guys let me know how it sounds. And right now you're listening to the iPad Pro with M4. This is the brand new one with the OLED display. These are what the 4 microphones sound compared to 5. You guys let me know which one sounds better or if they sound exactly the same. Also, they removed the ultra-wide camera on the back of the iPad Pro OLED. And I'll be honest with you, I've never used the ultra-wide camera on the previous iPad Pro. So to me, this is like moot. Like, I couldn't care less if they removed it. My feeling, the reason why they removed it is probably because they have data saying most people weren't using it at all. But you do get a couple of benefits, like they now have this auto true tone flash, which is supposed to help with taking pictures of documents. It's not available yet, but it will be coming with an update. And basically it's gonna remove all the shadows from a document when you take a picture to get a very, very clean look. Now, external sound quality is pretty much identical to the previous iPad Pro 2022. Really hard to tell the difference. I had to pull out an audio meter to see if there was a loudness difference. Old iPad Pro was a little bit louder at 1 decibel higher, but it's very hard for your ears to tell. Now, the star of the show, at least to me, is hands down the tandem OLED display. Like, this is a technology that has been talked about for a lot of years. Like, this is not a new concept, but this is the first time we're seeing it actually being delivered. And I have to say, it looks incredible. Like, getting 1,000 nits on a tablet this size is not an easy thing to do for OLED. If they just used one panel, okay, they wouldn't be able to get this bright because it would just start to get hot. In order to keep the heat down, you're better off using 2 panels on top of each other and splitting the power. This allows them to drive efficiency using the M4 processor and also get the required brightness that you just couldn't get before. Now, I did compare it to the Galaxy Tab S9 Ultra, and look, it's a gorgeous display, very similar PPI, But besides this thing, this still looks better because of that brightness. It just makes a huge difference. Now the big question, how much better is it compared to the mini LED display on the previous iPad? It's not as drastic as going from IPS to mini LED, but there's definitely a difference. And the area that it makes the biggest difference is contrast. Like when I'm looking at images and content where there's different shades of yellow, it looks flatter on the mini LED panel. Like it looks more like one color or one shade. Whereas on the tandem OLED, you get these variations of that yellow. Like in some parts, it looks a little bit darker, then it starts to roll off to a lighter yellow, for example, or a green, or whatever the color is. And that's where the difference comes, contrast. I was watching movies on this thing and you could see the shades a little bit more in people's faces. It was just a beautiful visual experience. Now, I don't personally think you should ditch your mini LED iPad and pick one of these things up because the display technology is still really, really good. But if you're transitioning from an older iPad Pro from an IPS display, your eyes are going to melt away. Also, the iPad Air is not using a mini LED display. It's still the same IPS panel. Look, it's a great panel, you know, like it's a solid panel. My only complaint about it is that for this price point, it too should have a high refresh rate of 120 Hertz. As for performance, this is a hot topic because the M4 is incredible. Like it's a very, very powerful processor. It's obviously more powerful than the M3 that's inside of the MacBook Air 13. I put up a bunch of different iPads. I included an Intel Core Ultra 9 from an ASUS VivoBook. I even included some leaked benchmark results from the Snapdragon X Elite. And this M4 chip, at least in Geekbench, completely dominates all those different devices. And this is really impressive for a chip that's inside of a tablet. GPU performance was interesting because in some tests, the new M4 10-core GPU beat out the MacBook Air 13 M3 GPU. But then in other tests that were a little bit longer, the MacBook Air 13 performed a little bit better just because the cooling is obviously there, at least for the Pro model. But I did play some games on it like Diablo Immortals and it ran fine. Like most devices can handle Diablo Immortals. It just looks really good on this OLED display. Even Warzone, which is a terribly, and I mean terribly optimized game, ran well on the M2, but obviously runs better with the M4. Now, I personally use DaVinci Resolve, and I was like editing and cutting up footage from some of the projects that I currently have on the go, and it handled it fine. You know, like it handled it without any issues, no matter the type of codecs that I was using, whether it was ProRes or the Sony codec, it handled it. But again, when I got to a certain point and I needed to add a bunch of stuff, I had to switch back to my computer. Now, one of the most impressive applications that I found interesting was Logic Pro. Like, I'm by no means a soundware engineer or a music producer or composer, so please take this with a grain of salt, okay? Like, I'm not an expert at this. But I thought it was really cool, you know, like Logic Pro, you can now take a song, it's called stem splitting, and then you can separate the bass from the drums, from the vocals, and delete it, maybe make it a little bit louder, or get rid of it completely. And it's doing this all with AI by separating it from the song. And like, you can pretty much take like any song you have and it will do it for you. And I thought that was really cool because as a video producer, maybe there's a song I like that's, you know, common rights, I can use it, but I don't want the bass in there, or I don't want a certain instrument that's very annoying. I can like basically expand it, get rid of that instrument, recompile it, and use it in my video. Now, the Apple Pencil Pro is obviously a new accessory made for the iPad Pro OLED and the iPad Air, and there's a few new features that come along with it. So there's Find My, which means there's a Bluetooth chip inside of here that allows the iPad to find your pen. You can also track it down using the Find My app. There's haptic feedback now, which feels really nice, very similar to the touchpad on the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro. And there's a few new features. So for example, the one that's most talked about is the barrel roll. So basically using the hover feature, I can put my pen over the display and I will see the tip of where I'm going to draw. And as I turn the pen, it's using the gyroscopes and the sensor to turn the input along with it. Now, not a big deal for like highlighting or, you know, using the fountain pen, for example, but this might be very helpful if you're drawing something and you're using features like Liquify. The other new feature is the ability to tap between your previous pen. So for example, I'm using the highlighter function right now. I tap it once or double tap it and it goes back to the eraser. I double tap it again and then it goes back to the highlighter. Also, if I squeeze the pen, I get a menu over here that pops up that allows me to select a different pen type, or I can go ahead and just select the eraser. So there's a few shortcuts that are implemented just to make your life easier as an artist. Also, if you have the previous Apple Pencil 2nd generation, it will not work with a new iPad Pro or the iPad Air. It just doesn't work with it. It's not supposed to. So you will have to buy the Apple Pencil Pro or the inferior Apple Pencil USB-C. Now, I also think it's important to talk about the Magic Keyboard. This one on the right is the previous one. This is the new one. Right off the bat, if you are buying the Magic Keyboard, I highly suggest going with white. This hasn't been cleaned in like 2 years and you can't see any fingerprints or smudges. Whereas the black version, this has been like 4 days and it just looks like a complete mess so far. So white is gonna show less. It's the material they're using. It's very rubbery. It picks up a lot of dirt and it's very, very noticeable. But this new version of the keyboard is a nice little update. And if you look at both of them side by side, what comes to mind right away is the fact that you now have an extra function row at the top up here. There's 14 keys that you can utilize. You can do things like change the volume, which is really handy, and obviously change the display brightness. The other change is the deck. This is using the same material as the bottom. It's very rubbery again. Whereas on this guy, they like pasted a metal layer. So it feels more like an actual MacBook, which is super handy. The actual typing experience is very identical. Like the keys have similar travel distance and of course actuation, but I'm loving the changes to the touchpad. Like this is significantly bigger and it just gives you a lot more room to move around. Now personally, if you really want the nano version of the iPad Pro or a matte-like screen protector, I'd highly recommend the Paperlike, who was kind enough to partner with me on this part of the video. The Paperlike is significantly more affordable than the nano version of the iPad Pro and can be removed or reapplied with the new one at any time. Paperlike's nanodots technology lets light shine around and through the screen protector with minimal refraction, meaning a clean picture quality with less glare and reduced fingerprints. Also, the nanodots contain tiny microbeads engineered to add resistance and improve haptic feedback when using the Apple Pencil or Apple Pencil Pro with your iPad. One thing I noticed right away was how much better it feels to write on the display, since Paperlike mimics the feeling of writing on paper. Plus, it's extremely easy to install with clear instructions. It's crazy that it's only 0.12 millimeters thin, yet it adds just the right amount of softness to make writing on the iPad feel more natural. The good news is that Paperlike is so confident in their product that they offer a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So if for any reason you're not happy, they'll replace or refund your purchase. The Paperlike works with all iPads, including the new iPad Air and iPad Pro with OLED displays. Now, make sure to click on the link in my description down below to learn more. So here's the bottom line. I like the iPad Pro OLED. It's a gorgeous piece of hardware, but I don't know who it's for. You know, like this is a very expensive product and I feel like it's really made for a niche type of person. Maybe you work for a big corporation and they're handing out iPads to be an accessory device to some of the work you're doing. But I feel like for the average person, this is just way out of their price point. Like if you're sketching and drawing, I highly recommend the iPad Air. I think you're gonna be super happy with it. And the M2 inside of here is more than powerful enough. If you just read and are browsing the net and watching content, I suggest the regular iPad. It just got a $100 price drop and it's one of the most attractive price points for an iPad period. And that thing will still last you a very, very long time. But there has to be more to this. There has to be a part 2. And I feel like there is, because there were a lot of hints dropped during the presentation that there's gonna be more at WWDC. There's obviously gonna be a lot of talk of AI, and I'm hoping to see a lot more software that really pushes this piece of hardware, because at the moment, it's not being fully utilized. And as someone who's in my industry, I feel like buying a laptop or a MacBook Air is still a lot more valuable. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.